The great hall of Council Prime was silent. Hyjin Lee stood at the center of the chamber, her hands shaking slightly as she held the datapad. Around her, representatives from 40 different alien species sat in their high seats looking down at her. The ceiling stretched so high above that she could barely see it. Everything about this place was designed to make visitors feel small. Hyjin was Earth's ambassador. She had spent 15 years preparing for this moment. Behind her, through the transparent walls, she could see the human delegation ships floating in the station's docking area. They looked tiny compared to the massive vessels from other worlds. She took a deep breath and began her speech. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "Humanity comes before you today to request membership in this great alliance. We have studied your laws. We have learned your customs. We have prepared ourselves to join the community of civilized worlds." Hyjin activated her datapad. Holographic images appeared in the air around her. They showed Earth's cities, its universities, its space stations. She showed them human art, human music, human achievements in science and medicine. "We are a young species," she continued, "but we are ready to learn. We are ready to contribute. We bring diversity, creativity, and determination to this council." High Chancellor Vareth sat in the largest seat at the center of the chamber. He was from the Krenathi species, a race that had been traveling between stars for over 10,000 years. His skin was pale blue and covered with silver markings that showed his age and status. He watched Hyjin with cold, ancient eyes. When Hyjin finished her presentation, Vareth leaned forward. "Ambassador Lee," he said, his voice like ice, "your presentation was very pretty. But let us discuss the truth about humanity." He raised one long finger and new images appeared in the air. These images were different. They showed human wars, battlefields covered with bodies, cities burning, nuclear explosions, the extinction of animal species, polluted oceans and poisoned air. "In the last 200 years alone," Vareth said, "your species has fought over 300 major wars. You have driven countless species on your own planet to extinction. You nearly destroyed your own world with weapons and pollution. You fight amongst yourselves constantly. You cannot even unite your own planet under one government." Hyjin felt her face grow hot. She wanted to argue, to defend her people. But Vareth was not finished. "Tell me, Ambassador," he said, "why should we allow a violent, destructive species into our council? What makes you think you are ready to walk among the civilized races?" Hyjin straightened her shoulders. She had expected these questions. She had prepared answers. "We have learned from our mistakes," she said firmly. "Yes, we have a violent history. But we are changing. Earth has not had a global war in over 80 years. We have cleaned our oceans. We have restored forests. We have brought back species from the edge of extinction. We are not perfect, but we are trying to be better." Vareth made a sound that might have been a laugh. Other council members shifted in their seats. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked angry. 80 years, Vareth said. A blink of an eye. The Krenathi have lived in peace for 5,000 years. The Telmorians for 8,000. You expect us to believe you have changed because you have gone a single human lifetime without destroying yourselves? In the observation area above the main chamber, young officer Taeyang Park watched the proceedings. He was part of Earth's security detail, there to protect the delegation. He had never seen an alien before coming to Council Prime. Now he stood among dozens of different species, all of them watching his people be judged. Taeyang clenched his fists as he watched Ambassador Lee try to defend humanity. She was doing her best, but he could see the council had already made up their minds. This entire hearing was just for show. The questioning went on for hours. One by one, council members stood up to criticize humanity. They brought up every war, every mistake, every terrible thing humans had ever done. Hyjin answered each question with dignity, but Taeyang could see her growing tired. Finally, Vareth raised his hand for silence. "We have heard enough," he announced. "It is time to vote." Hyjin stood alone in the center of the chamber as the council members registered their votes. The results appeared on a massive screen behind Vareth's seat. 40 votes against. 0 votes in favor. Not a single council member had voted to accept humanity. Vareth stood up from his seat. He looked down at Hyjin with something like pity in his ancient eyes. "The council has decided," he said. "Humanity is too dangerous to join our alliance. You are too violent, too unpredictable, too young. Perhaps in another 1,000 years you will be ready. But not today." He paused, and his next words cut like knives. "Furthermore, humanity is hereby banned from entering 53% of known space. You are forbidden from establishing colonies beyond your home system. Any human ships found in restricted areas will be destroyed without warning. This restriction will remain in place until the Council decides otherwise. The chamber erupted in discussion. Hijin stood frozen, unable to believe what she was hearing. They were not just rejecting humanity. They were trapping Earth in its own solar system like prisoners. You cannot do this, she said, her voice shaking. You have no right to confine us to our own system. We have every right, Verath replied coldly. We are the Galactic Council. We maintain order in this galaxy, and we will not allow a dangerous species to spread unchecked through civilized space. He sat back down, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. This hearing is over. The human delegation will leave Council Prime within 6 hours. Hijin walked out of the chamber with her head held high, but Taeyang could see tears running down her face. The other humans in the delegation looked stunned. Some were angry, some were crying. All of them had believed this mission would succeed. As they boarded their ships to return to Earth, Taeyang looked back at the massive Council station. The alien ships around it glowed with power that humanity could not match. The station itself was larger than any structure humans had ever built. But Taeyang did not feel small anymore. He felt angry. The Council thought humanity was too dangerous, too violent, too young. They had humiliated Earth's ambassadors. They had trapped humanity in its home system like animals in a cage. As the human ships pulled away from Council Prime and began the long journey home, Taeyang made a silent promise to himself. One day humanity would return, and when they did, the Council would regret their decision today. They wanted humanity to wait 1,000 years. Taeyang would make sure it took less than a century. The Council had made a mistake today. They had given humanity a reason to prove them wrong, and humans, as the Council would learn, were very good at proving people wrong. Earth went silent. After the rejection, the Council expected humans to protest, to argue, maybe even to fight. Instead, all communication from Earth simply stopped. The human embassy on Council Prime closed its doors. Human ships recalled from across known space returned home. Within 6 months, not a single human remained outside the Sol system. The galaxy moved on. Most species forgot about humanity within a few years. Some assumed the humans had given up, accepting their fate as a confined species. Others thought humanity might have destroyed itself in another war. The Council did not care either way, but behind the silence, Earth was changing. Taeyang Park stood in the command center of Earth's new orbital facility. He was 35 now, older and harder than the young officer who had watched the Council's rejection. Around him, screens showed data from across the Sol system, ships under construction, research stations in operation, training exercises near Jupiter's moons. The rejection had done something unexpected to humanity. Instead of breaking their spirit, it had united them. For the first time in history, Earth's nations had put aside their differences completely. There were no more arguments about borders or resources. Everyone understood the simple truth: work together or die alone. The Council had trapped humanity in their home system, but humans had turned that prison into a forge. "Admiral Park," a voice called out. Taeyang had been promoted rapidly over the past 15 years. He was now one of Earth's top military commanders, despite being younger than most officers at his rank. He turned to see Captain Daiho Kim approaching. Daiho was 28, part of the generation born after the rejection. These young people had grown up with a singular purpose drilled into them from birth: prove the Council wrong. "The new prototype is ready for testing," Daiho said. "Dr. Kwan says we can begin trials within the week." Taeyang felt a surge of excitement. Dr. Minji Kwan was humanity's greatest scientific mind. When Earth had gone silent, she had gathered the best physicists from every nation. Her goal was simple but seemed impossible: develop technology that would leapfrog everything the Council possessed. The Council used jump gates to travel between stars. These gates were ancient, built by a long-dead civilization. No living species knew how to create new ones. Every spacefaring race depended on the existing gate network, which meant the Council controlled all travel through the galaxy. Minji had decided that humanity would not use the gates at all. Taeyang made his way to the research section of the facility. He found Minji in her laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing complex mathematical equations. She was 43 now, with gray starting to show in her hair. She had devoted her entire adult life to this project. "Admiral," she said without looking up from her work, "come to see if I have wasted 20 years of Earth's resources?" "I came to see history being made," Taeyang replied with a slight smile. Minji finally looked at him. Despite her tired eyes, there was a fire in them that had never dimmed. "The Council's scientists said it was impossible," she said. "They said the math did not work. They said the energy requirements were too high. They said a ship could never generate its own jump without a gate." She gestured to the window. Outside, floating in the darkness of space, was a ship unlike anything humanity had built before. It was sleek and dangerous looking, covered with strange, geometric patterns that seemed to shift in the light. "They were wrong," Minji said simply. The test happened 3 days later. Taeyang watched from the command center as the prototype ship, called Pioneer, moved away from Earth's orbit. Commander Jiwon Nam was at the ship's controls. She was one of Earth's best pilots, chosen for this historic moment. "Pioneer is in position," Jiwon's voice came through the speakers. "All systems green. Ready to initiate jump drive on your command." Taeyang took a deep breath. 20 years of work came down to this moment. If the drive failed, they would have to start over. If it succeeded, everything would change. "Begin jump sequence," he ordered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the geometric patterns on Pioneer's hull began to glow. The space around the ship started to bend and twist in ways that looked wrong to human eyes. Reality itself seemed to fold, and then Pioneer disappeared. The command center was silent. Everyone stared at the empty space where the ship had been. Seconds passed, then minutes. "Did it work?" someone whispered. Suddenly, space folded again. Pioneer reappeared exactly where it had vanished. Jiwon's voice came through, excited and breathless. "Jump successful. We traveled 0.5 light years and returned. The drive works. I repeat, the drive works." The command center erupted in cheers. People hugged each other, crying with joy. Taeyang looked over at Minji and saw tears streaming down her face. She had done it. She had achieved what the council said was impossible, but Taeyang did not celebrate. His mind was already moving forward, planning the next steps. The jump drive was just the beginning. Humanity needed ships, thousands of them. They needed weapons. They needed pilots trained to use this new technology. They needed to be ready for the day they would return to face the council. That night, Taeyang met with Earth's leaders. They gathered in a secure room deep beneath Geneva, the city that had become humanity's unified capital. Ambassador Heejin Lee was there too. She was 70 now, her hair completely white. She no longer served as ambassador since there was no one to negotiate with, but she remained an advisor to Earth's government. She had never forgotten the humiliation at Council Prime. "How long?" she asked Taeyang. "How long until we can return?" Taeyang pulled up a holographic display showing construction schedules, training programs, and resource allocations. 30 years, he said. "Maybe less if we push harder. We need to build not just ships, but an entire fleet. We need to train crews who understand this new technology. And we need to do it all in secret. If the council learns what we are doing, they might try to stop us." One of the leaders, an older woman who ran Earth's resource management, spoke up. "The people are tired," she said. "We have been working non-stop for 20 years. Every resource goes to this project. Can we ask them to continue for 30 more years?" Hyejin stood up slowly, leaning on her cane. "I was there," she said quietly. "I stood in that chamber while they judged us, while they called us too violent, too dangerous, too young. They did not just reject us. They tried to erase our future. They wanted us to stay trapped in our own system forever, to fade away and be forgotten." She looked around the room at each person. "Tell the people why we work so hard. Remind them what the council did to us. When we return, it will not be to ask for permission. It will be to show them that they were wrong about humanity. That is worth 30 more years. That is worth everything." The room was silent for a moment. Then one by one the leaders nodded. The work continued. Years passed. The Sol system became a massive construction yard. Shipyards orbited every planet. Factories on the Moon and Mars ran day and night. Children grew up knowing that their entire lives had one purpose: preparing for humanity's return. The galaxy remained silent about Earth. The Council had forgotten about the troublesome humans. They assumed humanity had accepted their place. They had no idea what was coming. The alarm sounded across every Council station at the border of restricted space. Lieutenant Corvus was working the night shift at Border Station 17 when his sensors went crazy. He stared at his screen, not believing what he saw. Ships, hundreds of ships, appearing out of nowhere, but that was impossible. Ships could only travel through the ancient jump gates. There were no gates anywhere near this position. Yet his sensors were clear. 300 vessels had just materialized in empty space. "Commander," Corvus called out, his voice shaking. "We have contacts. Multiple contacts. Unknown origin." The station commander rushed to his console. She looked at the data and her face went pale. "Send a priority alert to Council Prime," she ordered. "Tell them we have an unknown fleet at the border, and run identification scans on those ships." Corvus worked his controls with trembling fingers. The computer analyzed the ship designs, searching through databases containing every known vessel type in the galaxy. After a moment, it returned a result. The words on his screen made his blood run cold. "Origin identified human." "That cannot be right," the commander said. "The humans were confined to their home system. They do not have this kind of technology." But the scans did not lie. The ships were human, and they were unlike anything in Council records. Sleek, powerful, radiating energy signatures that seemed impossible. Aboard the flagship Defiance, Admiral Taeyang Park watched the Council border station on his main screen. He was 73 years old now. His hair was completely white, his face lined with years of hard work. But his eyes were sharp and focused. 50 years. It had taken 50 years to reach this moment. Around him on the bridge, his crew worked efficiently. These were the best humanity had to offer. Every person had trained their entire lives for this mission. They knew what was at stake. Captain Daeho Kim stood at the tactical station. He was 58 now, with gray in his hair and scars on his hands from years of training exercises. He looked up from his console. "The border station has detected us, Admiral. They are sending alerts to Council Prime." "Good," Taeyang said calmly. "We want them to know we are here." He activated the communication system and opened a channel to Council Prime. His message was simple and direct. "This is Admiral Taeyang Park of the Earth Defense Fleet. Humanity requests an audience with the Galactic Council. This time we will not be asking for permission." On Council Prime, chaos erupted. High Chancellor Vereth had been preparing to sleep when the alert came through. He rushed to the command center, still wearing his sleeping robes. "The humans?" he said in disbelief. "That is impossible. Show me." The main screen lit up with images from the border station. Vereth stared at the human fleet. He had lived for over 2,000 years and had seen many things. But this shocked him to his core. "Those ships," he whispered. "How did they get there? There are no jump gates in that sector." Fleet Marshal Thane entered the command center, his armor still being fastened by his aides. He was a warrior of the Dravok species, bred for combat. He had commanded the Council Defense Forces for 300 years. "It appears the humans have developed their own jump technology," Thane said grimly. "They do not need our gates anymore." Varath felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear. "Mobilize the defense fleet," he ordered. "Surround them. Show them they cannot threaten the Council." Within hours, over 2,000 Council warships had gathered around the human fleet. They formed a massive sphere, weapons armed and ready. It should have been intimidating. The Council ships outnumbered the humans 7-1, but the humans did not retreat. They did not show fear. They simply waited. "Admiral Park, we are completely surrounded," Daeho reported. "They have weapons locked on every ship in our fleet." Taeyang smiled slightly. "Then let us give them a demonstration." "Signal Commander Nam. Execute Operation Phantom." Commander Jiwon Nam sat in the cockpit of her fighter, the Eclipse. She was 68 years old, too old for combat by normal standards. But she was still the best pilot humanity had ever produced. Around her, 19 other pilots waited for the signal. "All Pathfinder units," she said into her comm. We are executing Phantom. Remember your training. Show them what we can do. 20 human fighters launched from the Defiance. They flew directly toward the Council formation at impossible speeds. On the Council ships, gunners prepared to fire. But before they could shoot, something impossible happened. The human fighters began to phase in and out of normal space. They became translucent like ghosts. The fighters passed through the Council ships as if they were not there. Weapons fire went straight through them without causing any damage. The human pilots flew through the entire defensive formation, weaving between warships like they were dancing. On Council Prime, Fleet Marshal Thane watched in stunned silence. "What are we seeing?" Verath demanded. "Dimensional phasing," one of the science officers reported, his voice full of shock. "They are shifting their ships partially out of our reality. Our weapons cannot touch them. This technology should not exist." The human fighters completed their demonstration and returned to their carrier. They had flown through the heart of the Council fleet without firing a single shot or taking any damage. Taeyang Park opened communications again. "We have shown you what we can do," he said. "We could have destroyed dozens of your ships in that demonstration. We chose not to. We did not come here to fight. We came here to talk." He paused to let that sink in. 50 years ago, you rejected us. You called us too dangerous, too violent, too young. You trapped us in our home system and tried to erase our future. But we did not give up. We did not accept your judgment. Instead, we worked. We learned. We evolved. The bridge of every Council ship was silent as they listened. Now we return with technology you do not understand. With ships you cannot match. With capabilities you did not think possible. We are not here to beg for acceptance. We are here to inform you that humanity has arrived. You can choose to recognize us as equals, or you can choose conflict. The decision is yours. Verath felt the weight of his years pressing down on him. In all his long life, he had never been spoken to with such confidence by a species so young. The humans had been confined for only 50 years, a blink of an eye by galactic standards. Yet here they were, demonstrating technology that surpassed anything the Council possessed. He looked around at his advisors. Fleet Marshal Thane's face was grim. The military commander understood what everyone else was beginning to realize. The Council could not win a war against these new humans. Finally, Verath spoke into the communication channel. "Admiral Park, you have made your point. The Council will hear your petition. Come to Council Prime, but come in peace." On the Defiance, the bridge crew erupted in quiet celebration. But Taeyang remained calm. This was only the first step. The hard part was still ahead. He looked over at the communication station where Ambassador Hyejin Lee stood. She was 90 years old now, frail and bent with age, but she had insisted on coming on this mission. She had been there when humanity was rejected. She would be there when humanity was finally heard. Their eyes met. After 50 years of preparation, after half a century of work and sacrifice, humanity had done the impossible. They had returned. And the galaxy would never be the same. Hyejin Lee stood in the same spot where she had stood 50 years ago. The great chamber of Council Prime looked exactly as she remembered. The high seats arranged in a circle looking down at the center. The transparent walls showing the stars beyond. The ceiling that stretched up into darkness. But everything else had changed. Last time, she had been alone with her small delegation. This time, Admiral Taeyang Park stood beside her, his uniform crisp and his bearing strong. Behind them, visible through the windows, the human fleet waited. 300 ships that could appear and disappear at will, that could phase through solid matter, that possessed technology the Council could not match. The Council members filed into their seats. Many of them were the same individuals who had voted against humanity 50 years ago. High Chancellor Verath took his central position, but he looked older now, more tired. There were new faces, too. Younger Council members who had not been present at the first hearing. One of them, a woman from the Asherin species named Senator Lyria, watched the humans with obvious interest rather than fear. Verath raised his hand for silence. The chamber grew quiet. "Ambassador Lee," he began, his voice formal. "You have returned after 50 years. The Council will hear what you have to say." Hyejin took a deep breath. She had practiced this speech for decades, but now that the moment had arrived, her heart was pounding. She leaned heavily on her cane, but her voice was strong. 50 years ago, I stood in this chamber and asked for humanity to be accepted into this council. You rejected us. You said we were too dangerous, too violent, too young. You confined us to our home system like prisoners. She paused, looking around at each council member. You were right about one thing. We were young, but you were wrong about everything else. You thought confinement would break us. Instead, it forged us. You thought isolation would make us weak. Instead, it made us strong. You thought we would give up. Instead, we worked harder than we ever had before. Fleet Marshal Thane stood up, his massive form imposing in the chamber. You come here with weapons and make threats, he said, his voice angry. You demonstrate military technology and expect us to be impressed. This only proves what we said 50 years ago. Humanity is dangerous. Admiral Taeyang Park stepped forward. We made no threats, Marshal. We demonstrated our capabilities, yes. But notice what we did not do. We did not fire on your ships even when they surrounded us. We did not destroy your border stations even though we could have. We came here to talk, not to fight. He gestured to the windows showing the human fleet. Every ship out there has weapons that could level a city. We developed them because we had to. Because you left us with no choice. You confined us to our home system and told us we were not allowed to grow. What did you think we would do? Accept extinction? Senator Lyria raised her hand to speak. Unlike the older council members, she did not look angry or afraid. She looked curious. May I ask a question? She said. Verath nodded, though he looked unhappy about it. Senator Lyria turned to face the humans. Admiral Park, your jump drive technology. It does not use the ancient gates. How is this possible? The greatest scientific minds in the galaxy have tried for thousands of years to replicate that technology. How did humanity succeed in only 50 years? Dr. Minji Quan stepped forward. She was 73 now, her hair completely white and her face deeply lined, but her eyes were still sharp. We succeeded because we had to, she said simply. The council told us we could not use their gates, so we found a different way. We approached the problem from new angles. We questioned assumptions that everyone else accepted as truth. She pulled up a holographic display showing complex equations and diagrams. Your scientists said it was impossible. They said a ship could not generate enough power to create its own jump field. They were working from old theories, old mathematics. We started fresh. We built new theories, and we discovered that it was not impossible at all. It was just very, very difficult. The chamber was silent as council members studied the equations. Several of the science advisors looked stunned. Another council member, Ambassador Quellen from the Telmorian species, stood up. He was very old, even by Telmorian standards, and had a reputation for fairness. I must confess something, he said quietly. 50 years ago, I voted to reject humanity. I believed the judgment that you were too dangerous. But I was wrong. He turned to face High Chancellor Verath. We did not judge humanity fairly. We judged them by their past, not their potential. We looked at their history of wars and decided they would never change. But look at what they have accomplished. In 50 years, confined to a single system, they have surpassed our technology in multiple areas. What could they have achieved if we had welcomed them instead of rejecting them? Verath stood up, his face stern. You speak of their achievements, Quellen, but what about the threat they pose? They have military technology we cannot match. What is to stop them from using it against us? Haijin stepped forward again, her cane tapping on the floor. What is to stop us? The same thing that should have made you accept us 50 years ago. We are not monsters. We are not mindless killers. Yes, humans have fought wars. Yes, we have made terrible mistakes. But we have also built great civilizations. We have created art and music and literature. We have explored our world and reached for the stars. We are capable of both violence and peace. She pointed her cane at Verath. You judged us for our capacity for violence. But every species in this council has the capacity for violence. The Dravok were a warrior race before they joined the council. The Krenathi fought a civil war that destroyed 3 of their own planets. Even the peaceful Telmorians had a dark period in their history. Every species in this chamber has blood on their hands if you look back far enough. The difference is that you gave those species a chance to prove they could be better. You denied humanity that same chance. Senator Lyria stood up again. Ambassador Lee is correct. I have studied the records of every species that joined the council. All of them had violent pasts. All of them had to prove they could change. But they were given the opportunity to do so. Humanity was not. She looked around at the other council members. Perhaps the question is not whether humanity is ready to join the galactic community. Perhaps the question is whether we are ready to admit we were wrong. Admiral Park stepped forward one more time. We did not come here to demand membership in your council. We came to propose something different, an alliance between equals. We will share our jump drive technology with the council. We will share our dimensional phasing capabilities. In exchange, you will recognize humanity as an independent power with full navigation rights throughout the galaxy. He paused to let that sink in. We are not children asking for permission anymore. We are offering you a partnership. Accept it and both humanity and the council will benefit. Reject it and we will continue on our own. Either way, humanity is no longer confined. We have proven that. Verath looked around the chamber. He could see the calculation in the eyes of the other council members. The humans had technology the council desperately wanted. Their jump drive would revolutionize travel. Their phasing technology could change warfare forever. But more than that, the humans had proven they could not be controlled. They had spent 50 years turning their prison into a forge. If the council rejected them again, the humans would simply continue alone, growing stronger while the council stayed static. For the first time in his long life, Verath felt truly old. We will discuss your proposal, he said finally. The council will convene in private session. You will have our answer within 3 days. As the humans left the chamber, Hijin allowed herself a small smile. The council had not rejected them outright. That was progress. After 50 years, that was real progress. The vote would come soon. And this time, humanity would not be standing alone. The alarm cut through the night on Council Prime like a knife. Admiral Taeyang Park jerked awake in his quarters. For a moment, he did not know where he was. Then memory returned. He was on Council Prime, waiting for the council's decision on humanity's proposal. The alarm meant something had gone wrong. He grabbed his uniform and ran to the command center. Captain Daeho Kim was already there, along with several council officers who looked terrified. What is happening? Taeyang demanded. Daeho pulled up a tactical display. The screen showed the Calrex Nebula, a region at the far edge of council space. Red markers filled the screen, indicating hostile contacts. The Varelian swarm has launched a full invasion, Daeho said grimly. Over 5,000 ships. They came through the nebula using jump technology. Taeyang felt his blood run cold. The Varelian swarm was an old enemy of the council. They were a hive mind species, completely dedicated to expansion and conquest. For centuries, the council had kept them at bay using the jump gate network. The Varelians could not use the gates, so they were trapped in their home regions. But if they had jump technology now, everything had changed. How did they get jump drives? Taeyang asked. A council intelligence officer stepped forward, her face pale. We believe they stole the technology from a research station 6 months ago. They have been building ships in secret ever since. Now they are using those ships to attack. Fleet Marshal Thane burst into the command center, still putting on his armor. Where is High Chancellor Verath? He demanded. He is in the council chamber with the other members, someone replied. They are trying to organize a response. Thane looked at the tactical display and his face grew dark. How many ships do we have in the Calrex region? 800, the intelligence officer said. They are engaging the swarm now, but they are badly outnumbered. Thane slammed his fist on the table. 800 ships against 5,000, and the Varelians have jump technology now. They can appear behind our lines, cut off supply routes, attack anywhere. He looked at Taeyang with something like desperation in his eyes. Your fleet, your 300 ships with their advanced technology, we need them. Taeyang stood silent for a moment. This was it, the moment that would define humanity's relationship with the Council forever. He could refuse. The Council had not yet accepted humanity's proposal. They had no obligation to help, but if he refused, thousands would die. Entire worlds would fall to the swarm, and humanity would be seen as cowards who stood by while others fought and bled. He made his decision. Captain Kim, signal the fleet. All ships are to prepare for combat operations. We jumped to the Calrex Nebula in 30 minutes. Daeho nodded and began issuing orders. Around them, council officers looked shocked. Fleet Marshal Thane stared at Taeyang with an unreadable expression. You will help us? Thane asked quietly. Even though the council has not accepted your proposal? Taeyang met his eyes. The council rejected humanity 50 years ago because they thought we were too violent and dangerous. Let us show them what humanity does when we see people in danger. We fight not for politics, not for power. We fight because it is the right thing to do. 30 minutes later, the human fleet jumped into the Calrex Nebula. The scene was chaos. Council ships were scattered across the battlefield, trying to hold off the Varelian assault. The swarm ships were organic-looking things, covered in biological armor and bristling with weapons. They moved in perfect coordination, like a single organism rather than individual vessels. Taeyang assessed the situation quickly. The council ships were fighting bravely, but they were losing. Their tactics were too slow, too predictable. They were not prepared to face an enemy with jump technology. All ships, this is Admiral Park. Execute battle plan Hammer. Show these creatures what human technology can do. The human fleet split into 3 groups. The first group, led by Captain Daeho Kim, jumped directly into the heart of the Varelian formation. Their weapons tore through swarm ships that were not prepared for such aggressive tactics. The second group used their dimensional phasing to slip past the swarm defenses. They appeared behind the enemy lines and began destroying supply ships and support vessels. Commander Jiwan Nam led the third group, her elite Pathfinder squadron. They flew through the battlefield like ghosts, phasing through enemy ships and appearing exactly where they were needed most. On the Defiance's bridge, Taeyang coordinated the assault. He had spent 50 years preparing for combat like this. Now all that training was being put to the test. The swarm adapted quickly. They were a hive mind, able to share information instantly across their entire fleet. When the humans used one tactic, the swarm learned to counter it within minutes. So Taeyang changed tactics constantly, never giving them time to adjust. Jump here, phase there, attack from this angle, retreat to that position. It was exhausting for his crews, but it worked. The council ships began to rally. With the humans drawing off pressure, they could regroup and coordinate their own attacks. Slowly, the tide of battle began to turn. But the swarm was not finished. A massive bioship, larger than any vessel on the battlefield, jumped into the center of the fight. It was the swarm's command vessel, the heart of their hive mind. Weapons covered its surface like tumors. The bioship opened fire on everything around it. Human and council ships died in the barrage. The command vessel was simply too powerful. Commander Nam, Taeyang called out. I need you to take out that command ship. Jiwan's voice came back, calm despite the chaos around her. Understood, Admiral. Pathfinder squadron on me. We are going to fly straight through that thing. Jiwan led her squadron in a direct assault on the bioship. They phased through its outer armor and materialized inside the ship itself. Then they fired everything they had into its vital systems. The bioship began to break apart from the inside. Jiwan and her pilots phased out just before it exploded. But 3 of her pilots did not make it. Their ships were caught in the explosion. They died instantly. With their command ship destroyed, the swarm fleet lost coordination. The individual ships began to retreat, jumping away in disorder. The battle was over. The Council had won, but the cost had been terrible. Over 200 Council ships destroyed, thousands of crew members dead, and on the human side, 47 ships lost, including 3 fighters with pilots who would never come home. Taeyang stood on his bridge looking at the casualty reports. These were his people. He had trained many of them personally, and now they were gone. But they had saved thousands of lives. They had proven that humanity would fight for others, not just for themselves. A communication came through from Fleet Marshal Thane. The old warrior looked tired, but there was respect in his eyes. Admiral Park, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you. Your people saved us today. We will not forget this. Taeyang nodded slowly. We did what needed to be done, Marshal, just as I hope you would have done for us. As the human fleet began recovery operations, collecting their dead and repairing damaged ships, Taeyang knew that everything had changed. Humanity had proven their worth not with words but with blood. The Council could no longer doubt what humanity was capable of. They had seen it with their own eyes. Now the only question was what the Council would do with that knowledge.